Cinphomaniac is full of spoilers. If the movie's there in the title, we're probably gonna say everything that happens in it.
Your fate is set and you cannot escape it. How I've missed you, my son. One day this kingdom will be yours.
I will avenge you, father! I will save you, mother! I will kill you, Fiona!
I will avenge you, father. I will save you, mother. I will kill you, Fjölnir.
To me, the great hope is just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them, and suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera. To me, the great hope is girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart. To me, the great hope is people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them. To me, the great hope is in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart. To me, the great hope is people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making. To me, the great hope is one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to just be Mozart. Normally wouldn't make movies in Ohio is making the new Mozart. Just people who normally wouldn't make Mozart and be making. To me, the great hope girl in Ohio is going to make a Mozart beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder, and for once the so-called professionalism about Mozart destroyed forever, and it'll really become an art form. That's my opinion.
The worst thing is I've been hacked on the Instagram, so that's funny.
Wait, really?
Oh yeah, have you seen I'm all about crypto now?
No, I didn't see.
Yeah, these hackers, I don't know how. I must have clicked something I shouldn't have clicked at some point. I don't know what, but they changed the email address and phone number associated with my account.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they got in there deep. So I've had to send 3 selfie videos to Instagram. I've also sent them a photo with a code next to my face on a piece of white paper. And they still can't verify that my face is my face. And I'm like, they're just reaching out, trying to scam all of my friends for money and posting about crypto. So that's cool.
Yeah, well.
I don't even have a blue check.
Well, I don't know. Maybe this is a shortcut to getting one, because maybe after this they'll be like, "We're just gonna blue check you so that we know you're you."
Don't have to happen again. Yeah.
But I don't know. You're like, listen, I've been in movies. Listen, lady.
I'll have to fight to get what's mine. I'll have to fight to get what's mine back, and I know that, and it's annoying. But I won't have to fight as hard as the Norseman to get back what was his.
Wow, that was a Captain segue and a half. Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome, everyone. You're welcome.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Northman, because
oh man, I went to see it by myself.
Tell me.
And let me tell you, I felt like a Skarsgård creeper. Everyone looked at me like, "Oh, you're just here to see Skarsgård without a shirt on." We see you. We know what you're about.
That's
and I'm like, no, I have
the main marketing of the movie.
My pen and notepad. I have a pen and a notepad. I'm here for studious reasons. Abs, writing down abs.
You're sketching down like each groove of the ab
research.
You're like, there's this really very specific lateral
this movie
right
is about
here.
Abs.
I'll give credit, because okay, obviously, as always, full spoilers for the movie, but okay, that's the normal usual policy, and I think we are going to
normally
stick to that.
Give them all, pretty much.
I think we'll see where it goes. I'm not gonna make too much of a promise right now, but when I was thinking about before we recorded this episode, just because, well, I wasn't 100% sure you got around to seeing it, but 2, there's a lot to process in this movie, and I've only seen it the one time, so I don't think we're gonna get too deep into the depths of this film. But that said,
there's a lot of symbolism, it seems, and some stuff to pick apart for sure. But I think we have an overall review on what so I guess what I could give.
Well, I guess what I'm specifically saying is I don't mind talking about how it ends. And I think once we get into some, just even the basic of what the story is, and where it's coming from, I think everyone's going to be like, oh, I know how this story goes because you've seen it before. But But the only reason I even said that is just because I wanted to mention how Fjölnir, the villain, right? When you finally see him sans shirt in the ending, I was like, he wasn't letting Alexander Skarsgård get all the training reps. Let me put it that way. And it's necessary because they have to like clash and be somewhat comparable, right?
Well, he's the uncle that,
Right. That's what I'm saying. He's a whole generation older, but he's still fucking ripped as shit too.
But he has to still be a formidable enemy, I don't know. I think for this movie, I'm just going to give you like some overall observations, not dig too deep, but really quick,
Please
just
do.
open it with, I got Macbeth vibes from the get-go. And the vibes were not only in story, but in reference to the recent Macbeth with Denzel Washington. Despite it being in black and white, this movie, Northman, in my mind, has a lot of parallel cinematography elements, a lot of elements of similarities, like birds and the way that things are shot, the look and the feel. A lot of it felt like Macbeth. The fact that there is, later on, some moments with his mother, and there's moments of revenge, even more Macbeth vibes.
Hold
Macbeth
on, just
vibes.
real quick, Data. So, I mean, I definitely feel the Macbeth thing, but specifically, and I don't know if you knew this, and we're going to mention it anyway, but this story is supposedly based. I get it because I don't know. This is like could be pretty deep research on Eggers' part, which is kind of Eggers' vibe, but I bet it's actually common knowledge to some extent. I just didn't know about this. So it makes sense though. Once I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense. So this movie is based off the folklore that inspired Shakespeare's Hamlet. So it's basically Hamlet. It is just Hamlet. It's the same story. Yeah. And obviously when you talk, you're feeling that vibe, that Shakespearean vibe, and Macbeth and Hamlet have a lot of overlap themselves. So
in the story, there's a lot of major overlaps for sure.
It's not even just the story; it's like specifically like one. So one of the things about Macbeth, and I think this is what you're kind of alluding to, and I didn't see that new Joel Cohen Macbeth. I haven't seen it, but
you didn't?
No,
I thought we watched it for. We watched it for.
No, you did,
SAG Awards.
Yeah, I know you did, but like I still never got around to it. I meant to, so I let you kind of rep it on the awards, and that's fine. But I've seen like 4 other Macbeth movies and have read the play and all the above. So like it's not like I don't know Macbeth. Everyone does at this point, right? But like Macbeth has this whole idea with the witches, and I mean a lot of Shakespearean stuff has these common elements. They have sort of like ancient ritual. They have this sort of sense of like a doomed royalty, power being exchanged, cursed families, and there a lot. So 2 things that Shakespeare tends to draw from. One in particular I'm thinking of has always been part of my understanding of Hamlet. I mean, it's something that I remember we even talked about in high school, which is, given what I'm about to say, is very interesting that this would have even been brought up. But I'll give my credit to my teachers for just, making sure that this was understood, right? So Hamlet often is interpreted through the lens. I think even Sigmund Freud, like himself, like talked about this. Hamlet's often interpreted through the lens of Oedipus Rex, which is the Greek term, right? So there's always that element, but
kill your father, love your mother.
Yeah, which is interesting. But like, if you look at Hamlet very closely, it's like there are things that fit with that very well, and things that quite don't. So it made sense to me once I realized, well, that's not the only source of it. And obviously, Hamlet, again, Shakespeare's Hamlet, is so the same way Macbeth is the Scottish play. Hamlet is like the Danish one. Not that people like use that as a reference to it, just that it's set in Denmark. It's very explicitly, this is a Danish royal family. Now, I always was like everything in Shakespeare, there's deliberate reasons why he sets the things where he sets it. In this case, turns out, this is why I'm saying it, once I realized that this is all connected, I was like, oh, it makes sense. Because he was drawing from Norse folklore. And it, specifically what he's drawing from was this story that then Eggers, because I guess that's probably how he came to it. Is like, oh, I want, because like Eggers is obsessed with kind of going into like that deep kind of historical type of thing. That's kind of his driving sort of force. So he takes that and goes, I want to get into this story that inspired Shakespeare and bring that to the forefront. But of course, he's bringing it into the modern world where we not only have had Hamlet, we've had 10,000 versions of Hamlet light or Hamlet inspired, right? So it's kind of almost like reverse engineered full circle. You know what I mean? Like, because I watched this and I'm like, this is the same 7 story beats as The Lion King. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and down to actually, ironically, but maybe not ironically, maybe this is all deliberate. Maybe Disney knew exactly what they're doing with this too. Like they were thinking about some of the original roots, right? And what I'm referring to is, again, this is as much spoiler as I really want to get into. The final fight. That's almost like the thing I want to most talk about. So maybe we should just do it. Just the fact that is in this fiery volcano, and I think about the way Simba fights Scar in The Lion King and the setting of that fight, right? And the way
I'm
that's
thinking of
played
Star
out.
Wars.
Well, I was just about to get to Star Wars next, which a lot of people have referenced. Well, so many people have referenced this. Well, that's the last time I remember seeing a sword fight in a volcano. It might be the only other time, really. So there you go.
It's a saber. It's a lightsaber, but it's a sword. It's a sword made of light. Same difference.
Oh yeah, no.
Sword fight on a volcano, on an active volcano.
Well, dude, I'll give it 2 credits to the Northman on this, is because one, and again, not that I don't love what Revenge of the Sith did, it's actually by far the best part of the movie, even though there are things about it that like bear the brunt of this. That fight with on Mustafar literally was even billed. It was marketed around it. It's like, it's so long. I'm like, that's not always good. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, but like, it didn't need to be that long. Here, the fight is not that long. And so but like, it's just so impactful. It's visceral the way it's shot, again, because in the Mustafar thing, there's all this cutting. There's even cross cutting to the other plot lines, which again works in a kind of cool cross cutting way. Like we're mixing the Yoda Sidious fight with that. Okay, whatever. But here, because in fitting with the style of this movie, it's really only like 1 or 2, maybe 3 shots the whole fight, and you're actually in the volcano. So even before I thought of Mustafar, I just thought just even the approach to the volcano, right? And there's that whole scene outside where he sees the bodies of his mother and half brother, and kind of gives them their final rest and then moves in. That is straight up Lord of the Rings. I was thinking Tolkien. I was thinking Mount Doom, right? Like I almost thought like he was going to fall into the pit trying to grasp his uncle's sword. Like that's his precious, like, you know what I mean? It could have gone any number of ways. I thought the way it actually went is perfect, exactly how it had to. But it's interesting when you realize that, like, this is what I mean about the full circle, like kind of inspirational thing where it's like, you look at stories, and this is, I know you're into this stuff, like mythology and all these things. The whole sort of like Campbellian like premise of like, there's really just one story, right? When you look at this, it really does feel like that, or it feels like a moment where that's being highlighted in big, bold marker, because you're seeing so many modern things that were clearly influenced by it, and it reflectively must be influences on this, whether Eggers would directly say so or not. I mean, given the type of guy he is, unless it was truly accurate, he would probably be like, no, it's from this because I read this in this tome over here. But either way, the audience, including me and you, are going to be digesting it through the lens of popular culture. So of course we're going to be thinking of Mustafar. Of course we're going to think of Mount Doom. Of course we're going to think of of Lion King, right? So that's interesting. But the whole point is, we also do know this is from ancient tomes. No, Shakespeare was writing his version of this, 400, 500 years ago. It's like, this is these are stories that just keep popping back up. And so the themes and weight of the story, the ideas, the feelings, the visceral impacts of it, I think that's what's really trying to be communicated here, is just like, why do we keep going back to this well? I think the simple and obvious answer, well, there's two very simple, obvious answers, one kind of obvious, but maybe not so simple answer. Maybe that's a good way to like go through this. So number one, I think, is this. One and two kind of, they all relate to each other, actually. So I'll just say what all three of them are, and then we can kind of get into it. Number one is family. Number two is revenge. And number three is, well, I'll just boldly call that the sort of Oedipal thing. And it almost that's what links family and revenge. But yeah, I mean, Dana, what are your thoughts on, like, in general, just like I don't know, you can pick any one of those three and start on it. I'll let you say, but I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts on what this movie says about those things, or what you feel about those things and stories in general.
I think that the reason that those tropes have survived honestly, probably thousands of years, is because it's something that most people can think about and relate to. We all have a family. We all have felt like we are wronged and need revenge. We all have felt like we, are wronged in some way. And I think the fact that the Oedipus Rex complex is there is because that idea fascinates us in the worst ways. It's like looking at a car crash. You can't look away, and you can't help but be fascinated by people who act these things out. You know what I mean? By people who think that way.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like being fascinated with serial killers. Like it's human,
I think that's true.
Human complexity, like poking at the weirdness, wanting to see the disgusting and the bizarre, and being entertained by that.
Well, so I think absolutely everything. So yeah, I think because I even though I'm always hesitant to get too deep into this stuff, especially for multiple reasons, obviously, but when I say that, like, even back in high school, it's almost more shocking to look back at it. Think about how many genuinely frank discussions we had in, like, literature class, talking about, specifically, our curriculum was like going from Oedipus Rex to Hamlet and like to like reading
absolutely.
literal Freud. And I'm kind of like, I don't know why we were doing that, but it left an impression on me. Let me put it that way. One that's been
part of AP English education
in
America. Yeah,
I guess it's. I'm just saying that it's like, given how like broadly taboo and like puritanical, especially American education and culture tends to be, and especially where I was getting educated, I would have thought it seems incongruent with that. But hey, man, glad it happened. Nevertheless, I think it left this impression on me that going into, specifically because of the education I've had, like where I went from that to being at NYU, we were going through a lot of European cinema and various things. So those conversations kind of continued and deepened in my own cinematic taste, both before, during, and after, in relationship to all this. And then kind of going into my own work and what I write, I tend to be very Freudian psychological storytelling. That's kind of my thing. That's kind of where I'm always starting from. It's one of the reasons film noir is my genre, is because and just broadly thriller and psychological thriller, it's because of that. It's because of like my intense interest in parsing through not just character, like, oh, character has this story or character has like these emotions as played by actor. Not that that stuff doesn't matter. I like to look at like character is like has these deep subconscious fascinations that come out in their dreams and come out in the visuals and come out in their sort of strange relationship to their past tragedies and traumas. Like, that's the type of storytelling I'm interested in, the type of storytelling I tend to do. And so as a result of that, I have a strong connection going back to the fact that, as you said, like this storytelling stretches back thousands of years, right? I'm sure we could find Sumerian stories that have some of the same ingredients, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I know you would know. So that's the thing.
Well,
So,
but the thing is, back then it wasn't necessarily taboo to marry your siblings or a parent if someone, like, because it was about consolidating bloodlines and powers. It was a different type of story. But yeah,
interesting you should say that, Dana, because I mean, I think you're kind of getting at this, but that's true, which is again why the way we interpret these stories is a little different than how they would have interpreted then. However, it's pretty clear that part of like these stories, especially at least if you're starting, I can't speak for older stories. In fact, I would expect older stories to be a little different, but who knows? When you look at certain stories in the Bible or things like, but like, which might not, or which in some cases are not older, or at least the roots of which are not older than, say, Oedipus Rex. Bible chronology is a whole clusterfuck topic I won't even get into. But I'll just say that from what we can say, right, that story, at least, even without trying to take as much modern or even antiquity or past like cultural understanding out of it, or sorry, going towards antiquity, right? Like, so take out medieval or Renaissance or Shakespearean age or later Enlightenment era, whatever you want to say, interpretation of it out of it, or try to. I feel as if that's even possible. I feel as though just as close to textual as we can get, again, kind of impossible. And I'm not a Greek literature scholar. I feel like that story is morally on the side of these things are bad, which is telling because like all morality plays, that must mean either it was done to instill it in a society that maybe was morally on the fence about it, or to reinforce a society that was very morally clear on it. Which, again, even that is like a Venn diagram of depending on who you ask, right? So in other words, I think by the time you get to Oedipus Rex, it's pretty clear that's like, hey, don't kill your dad, don't sleep with your mom. However, and this connects to Hamlet, this connects to the Norseman. Even the sort of but whys of that are a little different. Right? Like you or I might say, well, because incest is bad, or because, well, that we really would probably start and stop there, right? Back then, it's not to say incest was like considered okay, though. As you point out, depending on when and where you're talking about, the attitudes of that vary quite much. The reality of it, especially, I'll point to the Shakespearean time, but I imagine in the Greek context, it was very similar. But for sure in the Shakespearean being like in this, Renaissance age of exploration kind of overturn era and Middle Ages, but where Queen Elizabeth is the defining figure of like Shakespeare's life, right? Other than himself. Succession and royal maintenance are the kind of guiding principles of all society, right? So therefore, you have to think, oh, well, this is really about usurping the throne and succession. It's not so much about like, oh, it's just bad to have a child with your mom because the child might be messed up. Like, that's not what people are thinking then, for the most part. It's like, that being said, right, and this is what Freud would point to, but the underlying subconscious and psychology about both why the idea is appealing and why the idea is terrifying are not the same, but they're connected through a deeper thread than just time passes and cultural norms change. They're connected through a thread of the primal urge, or the sort of, I would say, I reject the idea of quote primal urge. I'm just referencing it. What I would point to is more this idea of like, well, we don't always understand our emotions, and emotions are what really guide us. And this is going to help us bring it really back into the specific depiction of the Northman, which I want to build to, is that like there's a sort of emotional impulse. And this is why I also said, the three things I said, the Oedipus complex, but the other two things, revenge and family, right? Oedipus and the story and Hamlet are the things that connect those two things, or a way they can be connected. Often, again, from a Freudian psychological point of view, maybe the way. Either way, it's a connection, right? It's like, I want, what happens when your revenge fantasy is also your familial fantasy, right? And that works many ways, because it's this idea of like, who is your mother sleeping with? And if it's not, would you rather, since your father has been removed from the equation, maybe you didn't want it to be him anyway, is it better that it's your enemy who's also in your family, or is it you who maybe it's repulsive or immoral, but it's better than your sworn enemy? It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like kind of like that thing. I would rather die than see you win. It's like, why? It's like, it's actually, to bring it back to another great source of incest humor. Remember The Wolf of Wall Street, when Jonah Hill's character Donnie's being questioned by Jordan, Leo's character, like, about, is this whole thing about you sleeping with your cousin true? And he's like, yeah, well, it's better me than the other guys, right? Like it's like it's like this weird sort of reverse logic, but actually it's kind of how people think in their worst, right? Is that like, it's like, yes, the same sort of emotional, because here's what I would say. Revenge is obviously one of the most human things. It's why we keep coming back into storytelling. But I think the other reason we keep coming back to storytelling is deep down, we not only know it's wrong, but we find it to be like there's this sense of like, we're constantly trying to figure out, but why is it really wrong? And why do I feel so compelled toward it? And the answer, again, painting very broad brushes, because we could talk for 7 hours or actually 100 on any one of these topics. Because that's just fair. Well, dude, I mean, again, the reason we keep coming back to it is because no one's able to perfectly fit the answer. And as much as I might think I have them, I can't really promise that, right? So the point is, we have this drive towards the revenge, but we also kind of know, it doesn't satisfy, it doesn't work. It's kind of, it leads to ruin. It's this. The sort of connecting thread being our emotions. We're constantly at war with our emotions. We're constantly feeling like our emotions are incongruent with our laws, with our own inherent logic, with even our other emotions, right? That's the most important one, with our other emotions. The other two come secondary, I would say. So that's kind of at the heart of this whole Oedipus Hamlet thing, is the war and the emotions, the internal war. So when I look at the Northman, and we can talk about the set pieces, we can talk about the technicals, we can talk about the historical setting, we can talk about Viking culture, mythology. I want to at least try to touch on a little bit on all those. But since we're starting kind of uncharacteristically at the core, I think this is a story why I connected to it. The war within story. And that's why I think it's so perfect the way Alexander Skarsgård plays this character, who, yeah, by the way, again, I don't know if you caught this, even though it's spelt very differently, his name is pronounced basically Hamlet. Like, so Hamlet,
is it?
Right? Yes. Uh-huh.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. It's that's it's all right there for you.
Those were the vibes that I got.
Those were the vibes. Yeah. So he's I remember saying when it came out of the, he's not a man, he's an animal. And yet the whole story is about him connecting and finding his humanity. But that's the whole point, humanity. And I think this is the other reason why bringing this story back to the Norse roots instead of the sort of whatever medieval Shakespearean version is because those societies were very obsessed with a certain type of decorum and manners and all these things. The Norse Viking society, and specifically where we see this character start, post the time skip to when he's an adult, right? Is he's part of a warrior clan that is absolutely like totally into an animal, naturalist, primitive, sort of like understanding of the world and how they express themselves through their warrior-like rage, through inhabiting animal-like behavior, right? And again, I don't say that disparagingly. I think it's, despite the brutality and violence and rape and slavery, all other things we might have to talk about. I think it's kind of beautiful in the same way we might see that in American indigenous tradition or different things. There's a beauty to just wanting to be in the dirt and the earth, and like that soul scene where they're in their wolf like adornments and around the fire, right? It's like this sense of like, these are the things that guide us. These are the things we've always been connected to. The fire and the land and our rage. There's rage and there's wisdom, and they might seem opposites, but the whole beauty of our spiritual tradition is we are trying to thread the needle and kind of connect those things. That's how I look at this sort of wolf clan culture that he's starting from. And even though he gets away from that and he's running back towards something that ironically resembles more of like a sort of medieval kind of system, or what will lead to it, right? Where it's all about, I'm a king and I have a lineage, and it's all about my family tree and my descendants and their rule and their ability to whatever, protect the land, the fatherland or whatever. All that stuff, right? He runs back towards it and he doesn't seem to regret any of it. And yet I would say that all of everything that he encompasses and everything that he's trying to get to, it's all there still in the beginning. It's just expressing itself in a different form. And the journey he's going through is not a journey to become a different person so much as it's a journey to balance his own internal scales and his own internal desires. And that's why I think, again, jumping right to the end, when he says it felt like a weird cop-out line when he says it, but the more I thought about it, the more I feel like I understood what he was getting at and why it makes sense. Remember when he says, finally on the boat, he's with Anya Taylor-Joy, we haven't even talked about yet. And she's like, Olga is her character.
Olga.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love her so much.
Love her so much.
She's like, she's telling him about the pregnancy. So he's like, he's ready. He's already sailing. By the way, I love that they did this at the end, because one of the great early moments is when he's just swimming through the ocean to catch up to a boat. Like, who the fuck does that? I guess big hulking Superman does, but he does it twice. He like jumps off a boat. Yeah, he's nowhere near the shore, and he just fucking swims for like a day. I don't know. He's insane. And he sweats it out. But the thing he says before he jumps off, that she's like, you like, it's like his prophecy, right? And I know get this, because like as someone really into mythology, it's always comes back to the prophecies and the fates, and the Norse version of that is very interesting to me.
The teardrop that he was given by the witch lady.
Yeah, well, but it all connects too, because they keep. I don't know how much you know about Norse mythology specifically, but they keep mentioning specifically the Norn, which I only learned about this recently because I remember I was playing the Assassin's Creed game of all things, which obviously several moments in this movie made me think of course. But Norn are the weavers of fate. They're basically these old witch ladies that are constantly on like a weave, like a loom. And the idea is that the thread like represents
the fates in Shakespeare, and they have the thread.
That's where Shakespeare got the idea.
Yes.
Yeah. So like the whole point is that it's actually really cool symbolism.
They can cut your thread of fate. They can cut your life thread and end your life.
But I know you're into science fiction. A lot of things people think about, and like when you look at Assassin's Creed, they're literally trying to link these things. Is that the strings? They're like different timelines or many worlds theory, right? Like,
exactly.
So it's like these strings run in parallel, but then they get in knots, or they change the string. Like you're on one timeline and then you're moved to another, or you know what I mean? They branch off. So there's interesting symbolism there that like shows you that these ideas, well before we had scientific ideas, we were thinking about time and destiny and the paths of people's lives in similar sorts of metaphorical ways, right? So that's what the Norn are. They're the weavers of fate. So when he's talking about his fate and he referencing that a lot, what he's referencing is this idea of like, because again, in Norse tradition, the way I understand it is there is no changing fate. Like fate can change, but not because of what you do. It's because of the divine like assumption, right? But you have a choice. Where you do have a choice is like you can meet your fate, which is what you're supposed to do, or you can choose to reject your fate, which is kind of like damning yourself to suffering, right? Like there's no honor and there's no honor in trying to change your fate. the honor is all in meeting your fate, right?
You're still
So
going to get there eventually, right?
Right. So, but in order to meet your fate, that does mean you have to interpret it correctly, right? So there is still a sort of it's not just you just sit around and do nothing thing. It's like you have to actually rise to meet your fate, which also means you need to understand your fate, which is why listening to the seers and the signs is so important, right? So when he's like gets to that point on the boat, what he says is like Olga reminds him that his fate is he'll have to choose between love for his kin or something about revenge, right? The
Revenge,
violence.
yeah.
And he says, I choose both, which I thought was a kind of like, oh, that's the cop-out answer that just damns him. And that's how I felt in the moment.
You don't make a choice. If you don't, that's not really choosing. If you choose both, you haven't made a choice, right?
All that, I thought that too, right? But this is where sometimes, this is why I'm pointing all this out. The more I've thought about it since, and the more I've understood it, again, in the context that it's asking you to understand it, right? Which is through the context of Norse thinking, but also through the context of psychological realism and theme and all the things I was just alluding to before, right? So now when I think about it, I think that's perfect and beautiful because the whole idea is there is no choice in the sense of this is all encompassing you. You are a whole. It's like, it's more of like an Eastern philosophy. You want to describe that. But again, the whole point is that there's no geography to this. This is all human, right? You are both. You are both the rage and the love. Like in the beginning, he still had all the love in him, but he didn't have a way of expressing it. And then he meets Olga and they fall in love and he has this different expression, but it doesn't undo the rest of it. And doesn't make that part of it invalid. So when he says he chooses both, he's choosing to come to balance. He's choosing to come to a realization. In fact, tying it together with our many themes of the show, right? Our show. This is a very kind of Lynchian perspective from that point of view. Because like I said, it's all about the balance. It's all about saying the light half and the dark half, they're both important. They're both equal. And it's not that I should just indulge one or the other, or that indulging the dark half in order to satiate or balance to the light half is good. It's more about a holistic understanding of oneself and being able to kind of become a neutral force, if anything, right? Who's capable of doing the best of both and capable of fending off the worst of both, right? So that's arguably what I think the movie is trying to say spiritually and psychologically in the end. And that's why, hey, I get to ascend into Valhalla on the Valkyrie's back, which is the way they do that image is incredible.
It's amazing.
A lot of people have been asking. I don't know if you had.
I think my favorite thing about the Valkyrie was her grill.
That literally what I was about to say. A lot of people have been asking about the Valkyrie's grill. And I don't know. All I can say is knowing Eggers, it's 100% authentic. That's all I know. I don't think he puts grills on anything unless he's like, I saw this document that proved that Valkyries were supposed to wear grills according to Norse legend or whatever.
Well, I thought they had like filed warrior teeth, but I didn't remember like them having grills.
Yeah. It's hard.
So they can bite throats type of thing.
So there's a couple of different directions we can go, and I want to try to hit as many as we can. Where do you want to start? We have some of the things we haven't talked about that I want to talk about.
I have some observations.
Go
one
ahead.
or two more like visual things. So I don't know if you got these vibes at all, but I don't know if it was a direct reference or not, but the Tree of Kings.
Yeah.
In his vision, I got direct reference in my mind, like immediately popped up the Tree of Life from the fountain. And it's even done in that kind of cloudy, nebula atmosphere.
I immediately thought of the fountain as well. In fact, one of the first things I thought, two things. One, because when we first see that tree and that those visuals, it's before we fully get the whole sort of family tree implication of it. And so at that point, again, knowing even just, again, hardly an expert, and not even an expert, hardly even a journeyman, but I know enough basics from popular culture and various things. So the tree in Norse is, the ultimate tree is Yggdrasil, the tree of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
The world tree is actually literally what it is.
World tree. Yeah.
Yes. And now obviously the fountain is drawing from many different sources. But it's like the whole idea of a tree of life or a world tree is a cross-cultural thing too, right? It's a parallel theology. It's all these different things, which is fitting with all the themes we've already been talking about, right? So I saw that and I was like, I knew it was meant to be Yggdrasil, or assumed it was meant to be Yggdrasil. I'm not saying it's not. And that made me think, oh, tree of life, blah, blah. And the visual style, it had those particle effects and just a very similar, even the way the music was in those scenes. I was like, immediately thought Aronofsky and the fountain. And again, I know we talked about the fountain, and I have like better takes on it than I used to, but I was like, this might be the better version of that story, especially when you then cross it into the whole historical action part, which Aronofsky was trying to do the conquistador thing. There's a whole complicated story with the budget cuts and changes to the film. And I mean, this movie really is actually, just on that basis alone, like how it was made and what the expectation was, is a very fascinating parallel to the fountain.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So we could do a whole thing about that. I wasn't thinking we would. So I think I'm just going to not say too much more other than
we just wanted to touch on it really quick. There's also one like funny thing that I can't not mention. So we did have a Star Wars reference in the sword fight on an active volcano. I think there's one other subtle nod to Star Wars: the Chewbacca coat. Can we talk about the Chewbacca coat? And that so his uncle, like when he first comes in, he's got his face covered and the coat is literally the same color and length as Chewie's hair. And I'm like, what are you doing to me? He's like wearing this monster.
Well,
Chewbacca
the actor who
coat,
plays
and it makes
Fjölnir,
me feel like they skinned Chewie.
I'll just say this, because
coat.
I haven't heard, there might be interviews where Eggers has talked about either point of the Star Wars thing you're referring to. And like I was alluding to with the Mustafar part, I get the impression from Eggers that he would, on some level, even if maybe he would think it's funny, but he on some level would be like very defensive against the accusation, because he'd be like, he's just so obsessed with his historical realism that like I think he would just be like, no, we have that coat because this is the exact coat that I saw, blah blah blah. So like I have a feeling that is true. Nevertheless, even if it's an unintentional coincidence, the coincidence goes deeper than that, because and this is, I think, part of the reason why your mind went there. I don't think it's just the coat. Fjölnir himself being this big tall guy, but also one who, and you can go look at photos if you want to, looks a fair bit like particularly young Peter Mayhew, who played.
He kind of
Chewbacca.
Does with the dark hair and the nose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He like literally does. Like he easily could have played Chewbacca.
He could have.
You know what I mean? So there you go.
Almost tall enough. Yeah. Let's see. So what else? I thought that his montage reminded me of Princess Bride too. The like repetitive montage he tells himself to keep his revenge alive.
It's very Princess Bride, yeah.
You kill my father, prepare to die. It's also three sentences. I'll avenge you, mother.
Oh no, it's I'll avenge you, father. I'll save you, mother. I'll kill you, Fjölnir. I only think of the little boy version, not that older version, because he's like doing the rowboat. He's like, "I'll try to kill you, I'll avenge your father. I'll save your mother. I'll kill you, Fjölnir."
My name is
I love that little boy.
You kill my father, prepare to die.
I love, yeah. No, you're 100% right. Again, another thing that Eggers might or might not bite on if he was asked about it, but it's funny to think about.
I also felt like, why was it when he decided to find his uncle, he finds him immediately? It's like so easy. It takes 2 seconds to find him. He immediately just cuts his hair and switches the shirt. He's like, "Oh, I decided it's time for revenge." And then like, here they come. Oh my gosh, they're here. Oh my gosh, I just gotta
no.
I
think I know what you mean.
And they'll take me to him.
But wait, hold on. I think I know what you mean. But the way I understood what was happening was, he specifically, and you can say, "Oh, what a coincidence," but it's implied like this could have happened at any point before or after it happened. This was just the moment it happened, right? Is it after that raid on the village, right? When they go back to collect the slaves and all that stuff, he hears specifically the slave traders mention Fjölnir's name. So he follows the people that mention Fjölnir's name because they say not only Fjölnir's name, they say they're bringing slaves to him. So they lead him right there. It's not like he was looking for him. He specifically hopped the boat that he knew was going to him.
Right. Oh, I guess it's like the timing of the witch's prediction too can like kind of, I guess I just felt like he should, you know, have a little odyssey for a second to like find him and get his revenge. It was just so.
No, I get what you're saying, but it was okay. There's two things, because I think there is the Odyssey part. It's just not handled that specific way.
I don't think he doesn't need to have a whole Odyssey. Maybe just like a little baby Odyssey.
Well, I think that is what they gave him. Hold on. That is what they gave him. And by the way, I mean there's two things.
He's like immediately the only one that they save because he has all his teeth. And he's a big, strong guy.
Yeah, but no, that's okay. There are specific things, specifically what you just referred to and some stuff afterwards, that are meant to or seemingly okay to be like things where it's like it was a 1 in a million chance or 1 in whatever chance, maybe not a million, but fate is on his side. So fate is controlling the narrative, and therefore that's what happens. And you could even say him hearing Fjölnir's name from the slavers is another instance of the fate thing. But my point, Dana, very specifically make it clear, is that to me is something that would happen in any movie, in any time, anywhere. And you've seen it happen in a million movies. It's literally the thing where, hey, I've been out of the game for 20 years. All of a sudden, I hear someone mention something from my past. Now I'm going to go search for it. But in this case, there's no
son of a bitch. I'm in.
You're right. But like, and again, a similar thing, it'd be like if someone said, it'd be like if you were, let's say you had a vendetta against this guy named John Doe. John Doe, you have a vendetta against John Doe. John Doe's a figure from the past. You haven't seen him in whatever many years. Then you're at a cafe and you hear two people say, yeah, man, I got invited to John Doe's party tomorrow night or tonight. Cool. I would love to go to John Doe's party tonight. Sweet. See you there. They don't know you heard them. And then you followed them to John Doe's party. That's what happened. Literally. He just followed the people that said they were going to go meet the person he was looking for. So it's not, there's not anything complicated there. That said, I think where the whole kind of quote Odyssey or mini Odyssey, I think that's actually a good way to describe it. That happens once he gets to Iceland. Once he gets to Iceland, he is in the vicinity of Fjölnir. He doesn't kill him right away. Why? Well, two reasons. One is the more literal sort of surface reality reason, which is just that he could, but he's not sure he'd be able to get away with it or escape. And at that point, he's not necessarily thinking of this as a suicide mission. Not that he wouldn't be willing to. I think he's like, well, no, hold on. Actually, correct myself. That's not the issue. It's not that he's worried about whether he lives or dies. At that point, you got to remember, for the first 2/3 of the movie, he thinks he's there to save his mother. So he's very careful about what he does because he wants to make sure he can get his mother out alive. It's not just a matter of killing Fjölnir, like going up to him right away and slitting his throat. Because if he did that, then there's a chance he would not be able to get his mother out, either because the people, the brother, his stepbrother, or these other people would kidnap the mother and then he'd be starting from square one, or maybe they think she was in on it because they'd realize who he is, and then blah, blah, blah. There's a million reasons why that would be a bad idea, and he knows that. However, again, the more spiritual, mythological reason is because he actually is on a vision quest. Meaning he doesn't do anything until the visions tell him he's supposed to. Right? So when he gets to Iceland, he knows he's supposed to be there. But the first thing he does is he seeks out the seer to find out, okay, I followed my vision here. I was told 20 years ago that certain things would happen. And I, for a while, was in the wilderness without a clue. And now I've been given that clue, but that was only one clue. I'm not going to act until I know what the next clue is. And so that seer, who's like the successor to Willem Dafoe's seer, is like, all right, I'm going to give it to you. You got to get a sword. And it's a very specific sword. And then you got to do this. And then you can't actually kill Fjölnir until you're in the fire. You have to fight him on a lake of fire or some shit. So he gives him the whole roadmap to the rest of the movie. And you'll notice after that, he does exactly as the visions pretend, with some other tweaks, because once Olga gets involved, then it becomes also, not only do I want to save my mother, I want to save Olga. So I have to be careful about how to make sure Olga doesn't get killed before I'm ready. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot. I actually do think the script does a good job of giving reasons to delay the inevitable. That said, it is one of the tensions of the movie that I was worried about when watching it, which is like, is this going to just keep dragging this out? Now, again, I know the source material, so I know like not the literal source material, but the general sort of Hamlet stuff. So I'm like, well, you know, you don't. That's it. It's going to end there probably. So like they have to parse it out. So that could be an awkward thing, but I think the movie does a good job of doing it. Now, let's go back now because we've only really talked about Skarsgård. Even then, we haven't even come close to giving him his due. Let's talk about the cast of the film and kind of like where the movie starts, which I think is interesting. So I kind of knew going in he was probably short-lived for the film, but it's pretty cool having Ethan Hawke in this movie.
Oh my gosh, it's pretty cool having Ethan Hawke in this movie.
But you want to know the coolest part, which I didn't even realize until like either
I just watched him in Moon Knight playing a similar guy.
Dude, the Moon Knight one too. I just watched the latest episode.
Ethan Hawke all over the place.
Yeah, I won't spoil Moon Knight because I have a feeling you probably haven't seen the latest episode yet, but which was crazy.
Can we talk really quick about Alexander Skarsgård's IMDb page? If you guys have not looked it up,
go ahead.
So typically for anybody who's a non-actor out there, your IMDb page, and that shows any union job that you've done as an actor that's been published in some way. Typically, your first picture is a headshot where you look your best. That shows, your eyes open and smiling at the camera and looking great. Alexander Skarsgård has a photo of him, what looks like on a red carpet, wearing a tuxedo, shirt and blazer and shoes and no pants. That is his first that is the chosen photo he picked for himself to be on IMDb, is a pantsless photo.
Wow.
Go look at it. Everybody look at it now. It's hilarious. I mean, obviously he doesn't take himself too seriously. He's wearing tighty whities.
Oh no,
in his main photo.
Okay, I was going to talk about Ethan Hawke, but before we get to him, actually, let's talk about Mr. Skarsgård. I mean, I guess he's the one we've mentioned the most already, but like one of the things about him, and I knew this beforehand, is he's one of like the seemingly, again, it's not like I know him personally, but seemingly, he's one of like the sweetest, nicest guys. Like he just seems like anytime you see him, he's like just so like he's so just like relaxed, but like so excited. Like hearing him talk about this movie is really, really fun because unlike his character, he's just like beaming with a smile pretty much the whole time he's talking about this movie. He's just like, wow, it's so cool. And like, I when my mother saw the film, she was so excited for me. And like, it's just like, you would think it was like his first acting role, the way he talks about it.
Yeah.
And I love that exuberance. And he's had an interesting and great, varied and been mostly very good and on the uptick for a long time kind of career. Mm-hmm. This is really the first movie that he is the like lead actor in. Like I mean, maybe there's a couple like Swedish like movies and things like that, but not really. I'm trying to think, like he might have had some B action movie before where he was the lead, but like this is the first major film where he's the main lead character. And it's pretty much the perfect vehicle for him. Did you watch True Blood?
I did not catch up with True Blood. No.
Okay, so here's a little interesting tip from True Blood that's interesting. Obviously, Alexander Skarsgård, that's where I first really noticed him. Now, he goes back further, actually. If you go back and watch the movie Zoolander, I noticed this, by the way, on my own one day.
Oh my gosh, he's the model! He's the one going to get orange mocha frappuccinos.
He's one of the orange mocha frappuccino guys. Yep.
Stop. Oh my God.
His first big acting role.
That clicked for me.
Yep. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. He's been low key.
He's been in these streets for quite a while.
He's been working for a hot minute. I mean, he's in a Hollywood family.
All the
Skarsgårds are doing well.
All the Skarsgårds are doing well.
Stellan,
I think he might have been. I think actually at one point Bill was in this movie and they cut him, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so he's been in the streets a minute, but that True Blood was kind of like his breakout role. It was really after that he started getting a lot more work, specifically in TV, but HBO TV, right? Now, in True Blood, his character, of course, is a vampire named Eric. Eric's last name, I didn't even remember this detail, is actually Northman. And there's a whole bunch. Yes, there's a whole bunch of flashback episodes where he's a Viking. That's the whole point. So in a lot of ways,
I guess his background is Viking background. He talked about that on it might have been Jimmy Kimmel or one of those shows this past week.
He's Swedish, so Swedish people, Swedish and Norwegian and Danish people tend to all trace their roots, not universally, but most of them just broadly culturally, to the Vikings. That's like the Vikinglands, the Vinlands. No, Vinland's actually North America. Whatever.
Well, the Vikings were there too.
No, I know. That's what they called it. They called it Vinland. So, and it's actually funny because this movie was a reminder, or at least maybe they were translating it, but how Iceland was always Iceland. They were the ones who called Iceland, even though it wasn't actually ice, and then Greenland was Greenland, even though it's not. Whatever. I think that might have happened later. I have no idea. Anyway, yeah. So Alexander Skarsgård has played Vikings before, probably not surprisingly, again, given the fact that he's Swedish and huge, right? But it does feel interesting to me when I think of the True Blood stuff, and he himself said this, it was kind of coming full circle because now I'm doing this for real on a big scale and blah, blah, blah. Now, Alex, because we opened the first 15, 20 minutes in the past with kid version, our first introduction to Alexander Skarsgård in this film is probably one of them, other than the final fight, the most show-stopping sequence in the film, which is this raid on the Slav village, where he's with his wolf warrior tribe, and he's shirtless with his crazy abs, and straight out of a fucking God of War video game, fucking literally catches a spear chucked at him from God knows how far away and throws it back the most video game shit I've ever seen. And this movie makes it fucking so cool. I mean, that's the thing.
Well, then later he rips someone's throat out with his teeth,
Oh yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So the fact that this sequence, it's technically two shots, but the bulk of it is this oneer, goes the way it is. It is, if you've played the new God of War video game, which is in the Norse version. If you've played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you just been playing video games. This is the most video gamey ass sequence ever, and I don't mean that as any disrespect to Eggers, because I know very much the film craft and historical accuracy and all that shit. But who cares? Because he said it. He also would tell you he's trying to make a really entertaining movie this time, or at least the most he can within the limitations of what he's willing to do. And having a sequence like this, to get all the fucking, whatever, gamer nerds, hyped, or just people in general, hyped up with, adrenaline pumping, like I said, just guy walking now with the hatchet, shirtless, just fucking killing everyone in sight, biting out dudes' necks, fucking just everything, right? I was like, yo. And they had shown a little bit of that sequence in the trailer, but I was not prepared for how crazy that was. Even the way they storm the the actual battlements is like crazy too. It's like they just like get up and it's
And
classic.
The effects were so well done. I get a little bit of what's called vasovagal response to blood in real life, but I typically can separate that from film, and I don't get queasy when I watch gory films. Usually, there was the like nose cut off scene in this
Oh yeah,
when he was young that I caught myself looking away and like going. Bleh.
there was the straight up fucking nose brain penetration scene later.
Nose brain penetration, but that's not as bad. It's like there was a guy also with like half of his face gone, and I was just like, can't look at this for a second. I need to look away. It was so well done. Like I said, I usually can separate. I know I have jars of stage blood in my closet at all times. Like I know that's that. And I can usually see the difference, but this was so fast and violent with hardly a warning. And I think that's what I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Dana, and this really meant a lot to me. Like, it was very telling to me in all the best ways, the way this like stretch of the film plays out, because you get this absolute adrenaline hype, brutally violent, show-stopping one take set piece, right?
Right.
And it's very, again, in character, you're getting this sense of like, oh my God, these are these brutal, absolute warrior people, but I'm enthralled because Alexander Skarsgård is just like, again, this is what I'm saying. The fact that he's so giant and so ripped so helps sell this vibe I'm talking about of like, this isn't even a real person. This is a fucking video game character. But the movie maximizes that and then immediately kind of like switches your mindset, and again, subtle without overly drawing too much attention to it. And especially because, again, Eggers being as historically minded understands that the character that he's telling the story about, Amlin, he has sensitivity, and the part of the movie, like I said, is about this journey of balance. So like he's getting more in touch with his sensitive and peaceful side. That said, he lives in this world. He does not think it's weird to have women be raped and houses burned with people inside, or to have people taken as slaves. There's nothing strange to him about that. However,
no, that's normal plundering.
It's normal. But however, what I'm getting at is the movie, nevertheless, and nor is the movie trying to pander to people like us, modern people, who think that. Nevertheless, the movie strikes just the right balances. As that sequence ends, there's a moment where he finally slows down to breathe, and you can see all that stuff going on in the both foreground and background as the camera kind of moves and stuff. And it's also, I caught this right away. That's actually also our first introduction to Olga. It's like she's just in the background fighting with these guys, trying not to, and obviously Olga becomes a reason and insight into that whole situation of like, yo, you did not want to be a commoner woman in this era ever. like just no. In fact, you don't even really want to be a royal woman, honestly.
Not at all.
But like, definitely not a commoner woman.
Not even that.
No,
not even that, because apparently the Northman was forced on Nicole Kidman by Ethan Hawke.
I want to talk about that. We'll get to that.
She's basically like, that's why I never loved you, because I was raped, and that's why you're here.
Yeah. No, we have, I mean, obviously that's very connected to what I'm saying now, but I want to save the discussion on that for a second, just to say that in this immediate moment, before we know we're getting all that, you see that, and Alexander Skarsgård the movie pauses you with him, and then we go from that, because again, these all sequences are connected, to the wolf set the fire. So what I'm saying is, you get three kind of different vibes in a row, and they kind of seamlessly work together. And by the time you get through all three, that's when I feel like the movie really has set you up and itself up for success, because you get this crazy set piece, violence, adrenaline pump, like I said, just pure video gamey kind of indulgence, but it slows itself down, brings you into the sort of brutal reality, and then brings you back up, not back into the violence and chaos and machismo, but into the sort of deeper spiritual kind of resonance that these people would have actually had as their primary outlet of making sense of the former two things, right? Because that's how Alexander Skarsgård's character, Hamlin, is actually processing this. He's not processing this, especially not at that point, through, I'm like watching the videotape playback of my own fucking brutality. When he's in those moments, he doesn't even know what the fuck's happening for the most part, right? And then afterwards, he has a moment where he breathes and he has to see what happens. It's like, am I a part of all this misery and pain? And then it's like, well, I am. But how do I live with that? How do I get through that? How do we all get through that? The answer is connecting to a deeper purpose, a deeper understanding, a deeper resonance with his tribe, with his destiny, with everything. And that's where the spiritualism comes from. Which isn't to say that the spiritualism justifies the brutality and violence. In fact, I would explicitly argue it absolutely does not. However, it is important to understand through the lens of the historical realism that is how Alex he would understand that. Now, I'll use that to make this other point clear, because I wasn't sure where the movie was going to strike this balance or what balance there would have to be before I saw it. But like I said, Eggers wants to make this film in terms of historical realism, and he's had supernatural elements in his previous two films, so this is not unusual. In fact, they're very much the point of the previous two films. But as in both those previous two films, his whole understanding or the reason to include the supernaturalism is not because it's to, make explicit claims about the reality. It's more meant to imbue you into the realism of the characters themselves' psychology, right? So in order to be historically realistic to the perspective of Hamlin, you would have to understand Hamlin seeing the world through the lens of his spiritual and cultural understandings, which is rich with mythology and superstition. So that's why you have to have all the sort of more supernatural elements.
Can we also talk about a little bit Willem Dafoe's supernatural, 3 scenes? He was only in it.
Well, so
as the
I want to get
the
to
guide.
him. That what I said might be the best bridge, but I don't know. Maybe we should talk Ethan Hawke first, so we can talk about them together in that scene. Okay. So getting back to Ethan Hawke, my man. So I love that he's in this film. One of the reasons for that, by the way, that I only realized a little bit into it is the Hamlet itself connection. Did you ever see Ethan Hawke's Hamlet?
Oh, I forgot he did a Hamlet. No, I did not.
The famous 90s Hamlet in the modern
That's
world
right.
Hamlet, where he gives the speech of the Blockbuster video.
Yeah, I did see it I think I saw it. I just said that I think I haven't seen the Ethan Hawke Hamlet since maybe the year 2000.
Yeah, it's around one. Yeah. Oh, man. Well, here's the thing. So I get that connection, and Ethan Hawke's an actor I love, like you mentioned. We've been watching him do great work on Moon Knight as of late. Always great. First Reformed. We haven't potted about it explicit yet, but one of my favorite movies the last few years. Definitely one of his probably still singular best performance. And he's only in the movie for a few minutes, which is what I expected, given once I realized what this movie was and who he's playing. It's like, oh, yeah, he's going to die very soon. I kind of assumed they would bring him back for more visions, but they actually didn't do that even once, which, I wish I saw him more, but I think maybe they probably made the right choice there because the absence is important. That said, he really is the lead for the first 15 minutes of the film and does an interesting sort of task there because, by the way, just a slight thing I noticed, which I thought was in terms of Eggers and his realism, I was like, that's a little interesting that you would do this, but I probably get why. So we talked about how huge Fjölnir is, right? And obviously how huge Alexander Skarsgård is and becomes, right? They do some visual tricks to make Ethan Hawke a lot bigger than he actually is. They give him a little bit of the Gandalf treatment.
There's the scene where he's with Nicole Kidman in the beginning.
Yeah.
He's got a sleeveless shirt and they light him such a way that his arms look ginormous and so muscly. I'm sure that they are ginormous and muscly. Don't get me wrong, but they look extra ginormous and muscly because of the lighting.
Ethan Hawke's in great shape and is all that, but like they made a very deliberate choice to be like, Ethan Hawke is not playing a guy Ethan Hawke's size. They made a deliberate choice to use visual tricks. Again, although they didn't really, what I'm saying is this is the one thing in the movie that did not work for me. Like I didn't buy it at all because I was just too hyper aware of what Ethan Hawke's actual size is, and it was distracting. But they made the deliberate decision to like be like, no, but Ethan Hawke is playing a dude who's bigger than Fjölnir. They did a deliberate thing where Fjölnir is shorter than him, which is like, it made me not realize how big Fjölnir was until later. And then I was like, wait a minute, that I already noticed that they were doing some weird fuckery with Ethan Hawke's size, and now it's like next level. But can I tell you the real reason why the size thing does not work? Is because it's inconsistent. Because in scenes where, because like, here's the thing, Nicole Kidman's also huge, and we all know the whole Tom Cruise thing.
Yeah, she's like 6 feet tall. It's ridiculous. She's
that, yeah, right. So in other words, the scenes with Nicole Kidman and the scenes with Fjölnir are the scenes where they do the size manipulation. The other scenes, the scenes with the boy and the scenes with Willem Dafoe, they're not doing the size manipulation. And so it's like, it doesn't work. like, and granted, it would be even weirder to some extent if they try to do all that forced perspective stuff with, and like Apple Box or whatever, with people that are smaller than him already. But it was like too obvious.
Or maybe
the differential
they tried
there.
it and it looked stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It's like one of those things where I'd be curious to see if Eggers talks about it anywhere or what was going on with that. Yeah, there's an interesting conversation that we could have. I'm saving, I guess, for a little later about like kind of sort of what the compromises on this movie were. But anyway, yeah, it didn't really work for me. But that was like the one thing in the beginning that was kind of awkward and that it wasn't really dictating. But the idea, and I knew right away as soon as this movie was announced and they announced, oh, Ethan Hawke is playing the king, the father of the Northman. I was like, oh, he's going to be so great in that. That's going to be so cool. Because I was like, he, especially lately, is like so good at playing these types of characters, these like sort of like wise, but like, you know, flawed dudes, you know, like, and so I was like, oh, this is going to be great. He's going to definitely make an impact. So I got so much out of that, which now brings us to the best scene in that early going on, and maybe like the most Egger scene in the whole film, which is the sort of vision quest with Willem Dafoe scene. So yeah, let's talk Willem Dafoe. What did you think about all that?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I'm sure the symbolism is deep there, that the jester is his guide. I do wish there were more Willem Dafoe, and I typically say that in everything he's in. But I think this specifically, I think I agree with you. Like, why wasn't there more callbacks? Maybe it just wasn't necessary for the story. I get it. But, you know, he had those few scenes in the beginning and then kind of wasn't brought up again or mentioned again or seen again.
Well, it's because he's dead.
Yeah. But
I get what you mean.
Flashbacks could have. Yeah, he was the guy.
I thought the head was going to come alive later. It didn't actually.
It didn't.
But like,
yeah,
I think it was very deliberate
creepy.
the way it made you think it could, because it was trying to ease that tension. Like it was like Hamlin was looking at it like it was about to start talking to him, and it never did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I think to be honest, I think that's the reason it didn't come alive, because we all know from Hamlet, the whole skull thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that's part of the same story. We have to allude to it. This is that. That's where this comes from.
Right.
But there have been versions of Hamlet where the skull comes alive and talks, and we don't want to do that. I think that's why they didn't do it. But it sucks because the Willem Dafoe talking skull would be amazing.
Well, it kind of could have played, because there are instances where the Northman has visions. He envisions him having to fight for the sword, but then he just goes up and grabs it. Right?
Well, that's an interesting interpretation. Obviously, if you're thinking in terms of realism, that's presumably what happened. But yeah, like I said, I think that's one of that's actually a good point, because that's one of the weirder moments where the realism and the non-realism really kind of clash a bit more. because he has this whole fucking fight with the skeleton.
Right. The whole battle. And then he just takes it and the skeleton falls apart.
Well, it's like,
oh, so that was all in his mind? Was that?
But the skeleton falling apart is also in his mind. Is the thing.
Oh, is it?
Well, it has to be. I mean, that's not what happens in real life. But I just, I looked at that like one of those like double visions. Like Vision A is like precedes Vision B, but they're both visions. Nevertheless, obviously, he just gets the sword because he's not fighting a skeleton.
The body falling apart was real.
Well, I don't know. I guess the reason I say that's not real is just because, like, skeletons can crumble, but not like the way it crumbles in this movie. Like, it crumbles in this movie like it's literally like a Thanos snap.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only reason I'm saying it. And Eggers pays way too much attention to realism and detail to do that if it wasn't like meant to be supernatural on purpose.
Sure. I guess in my mind, it's like he had been turned to salt or something somehow, and he was like disintegrated.
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is.
No. You're probably right, and I just thought about that.
It looked literally looked like a special effects. So that was like the first and foremost reason why I felt like it had to be supernatural. But yeah, I looked at it like a double vision thing, which again I think fits with the whole mythological sort of subtext there, because it's not about fighting a dead skeleton. It's about mastering and conquering your fear. So he has to fight the skeleton to know that he can beat it. And then he gets to pull the sword and be like, yes, I am the master. Therefore it poses no threat to me. Therefore it just disintegrates. Kind of that was my read on it, at least. But anyway, so we talked about our introduction then to, let's go back, even though we get a very different taste of her later. Let's talk about Nicole Kidman, because that's the other pairing. I was like, okay, you got Ethan Hawke as the king, Nicole Kidman as the queen. This is one of those castings where so much is being communicated that, I mean, oh my God. I knew right away. I didn't even, see, that's the thing. I didn't even know the Hamlet thing until like right before I saw the movie. Like I knew before I started watching it, but like I'd found that out like maybe a day or two before. And I was like, oh, duh, that makes so much sense. But I did just like, again, having a very basic sense of when this movie was like being prepped and casting announcements and blah, blah, blah. As soon as Nicole Kidman was cast, I just fucking knew. I was like, oh, they're definitely doing some kind of Oedipal thing here. Because that's just why you cast that person, no offense. And it's so fitting, because I didn't even put two and two together immediately, but probably subconsciously I did. You know when Alexander Skarsgård and Nicole Kidman were together on screen before, right?
No.
Big Little Lies.
Okay.
And who are they to each other on Big Little Lies?
No idea.
Oh, have never seen Big Little Lies?
No. Are they married?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So.
Got it.
Not only are they married. Well, there's a whole, I won't even get into it. I not that I really give a shit about spoiling Big Little Lies at this point, but like, I'm not even going to get into like what the context really there is. But I will say it's implied in that Nicole Kidman is younger than him to an extent.
What?
Oh yeah. But I was joking with my sister about this. And after I saw this movie and part of my recommendation for her to go see it, I even joked about this again. But I remember Miranda sends me this, this picture. This was like 2-3 weeks ago. One picture was Nicole Kidman, like 1995. The other was picture like today. I think both of them were in movies with Joaquin Phoenix. And it was like same 20 years later, playing younger than she is in the previous movie.
Wait, so her character is supposed to be younger than his character in Big Little Lies?
Yeah, if I recall Big Little Lies correctly, it's not like terribly explicit, nor is it like made a big deal out of. But like the implication is that the characters are the same age, or more like Alexander Skarsgård's character is a little bit older than Nicole Kidman is, right? So Nicole Kidman, because this is the whole point of what I just said. Nicole Kidman is one of the only actors I know that plays younger than she is regularly, to the point where she's playing younger characters, insinuatedly younger, because it's usually never made too explicit because they don't want to draw too much attention to this, but insinuatedly younger characters than she's played in the past when she was literally younger. So, and this to me feels very deliberate.
Goals.
Yeah. Well, goals for sure as the actor, but this is using that crazy sort of like unique situation of Nicole Kidman being like the only actor given permission to play women in her 30s and while she's in her 50s, almost 60. Her
and Kate Beckinsale. Kate
Beckinsale is the other one. You're right, but Kate Beckinsale doesn't work.
Kate Beckinsale is absolutely aging in reverse as well. How does this woman look? I would card her. Show me your ID.
Show me your ID. Yeah,
you're not old enough to drink alcohol. You ain't got no wrinkles.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like, so that's the thing. So when they cast Nicole Kidman, right, and you know all that, and then you think about it. Notice too explicitly in this movie when it jumps ahead like at least 15, if not 20 years or even more, right, to the future. I think it's really more meant to be like 10-ish years, because I think it's supposed to imply that Hamlin's younger half brother was not born terribly long after the events happened, meaning that Alexander Skarsgård is also playing way younger than he is. But I mean, I think that also makes sense.
They show the baby. They show his uncle holding the baby before everything goes down, right? So the baby, his cousin is literally an infant, and he holds him up and goes, "My son." Before
that, okay, that is a timeline marker, but that's a different son. That's the stepbrother, not the half brother.
Oh, I thought it was the one that
no,
the dark-haired boy, his cousin.
Because he didn't. I mean, despite all the fucked up things going on in that family, he wasn't having a baby with his brother's wife before his brother was dead.
That's okay. I'm confused, but that's why I thought that was the older son.
There's two sons. Fjölnir has two sons. He has the older son, who's the stepbrother. He's not Nicole Kidman's son. Then he has the younger brother, who is Hamlin's half brother.
Yes.
Who is
the older one? The older one was the one that was born when when Ethan Hawke got murdered.
Right. So I'm saying you're right to remind me of that, because that tells you that it's been probably at least about 15 years. I was going to say it could be 10, because it's possible Alexander Skarsgård.
I think longer, because his cousin has a beard and is in charge of stuff.
But
he looks 20 years old.
I know, but Dana, that's what I'm about to get to. We got to remember what year this movie takes place. Like, you were considered a full adult male who would be growing your facial hair by the time you were 16. So that's why I'm saying.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. So he
again, to that point about how old, and I'm sure Eggers has exact answers to all these questions, and I haven't read it. But I believe, based off of the context clues, again, thank you for reminding me of that, because I'd forgotten about that whole part. Then yeah, it's been about 15 years, which makes sense, because that baby's now like a 16, 17-year-old kid, a man. Not kid, you're a man when you're 16, 17. And that would make Alexander Skarsgård's Hamlin like in his mid-20s or a little bit younger. But that's the point. Alexander Skarsgård's in his late 40s. You see what I'm saying? So he's playing a lot younger than he himself is. But again, that makes sense in this world where a person in his lifestyle wouldn't be expected to live past 30. And doesn't. He fucking dies at the end of this movie. Now, that also makes the whole pairing with Anya Taylor-Joy a lot more, less weird. I don't think it's weird for her as the actor. Like, it's weird. That was like, it was unsettling to me at first, just again, not only because of my literal real world awareness of the age difference between those two, because Anya Taylor-Joy is actually only like 21 years old. Or maybe she might not. I don't even know she's 21.
She would have been married at age 11 back then, though.
Yeah, I know, but that's this movie is also aware that her character's aware that that's not what she wants to have happen. Or I think her character, by the way, they don't say, again, I'm speculating based, but we've already been doing this age speculation. I believe her character's probably supposed to be like 13, 14 years old, because it's almost implied like, hey, you could have been married off already. Because you're not, you're fair game. You know, it's like,
right.
It's fucked up. You know, and there's that whole thing early on where Fjölnir wants to turn her into his rape slave, and
she wipes blood all over him. Get it, girl. Good for you.
Well, it comes back later because she's like, you know, you're scared of a woman's blood, and like, a lot of slaves just get their throats slit for no reason in that scene, which is again very pointed. No, but anyway, Anya Taylor-Joy, whatever she's playing, the actor herself is still incredibly young. I don't even know exactly how old she is right now. My guess is still like
early 20s for sure.
Early 20s for sure. Definitely not older than 25. It could be wrong, but she's not. She's got to be around my sister's age at the oldest. But anyway, she plays this character who I was just like, this is a very interesting character, because I'm trying to think, it's been a long time since I've actually studied or seen an interpretation of Hamlet. So I'm trying to remember exactly what the Shakespearean equivalent of this character is, because I get a lot of those Shakespearean love interests confused together. But it is very interesting the way that character is played, because she herself is like another spiritual guide, arguably the most important one, right?
She's a witch, yeah. Well, here's the thing. In Hamlet, doesn't he love Ophelia? Her name starts with
that's one of the names. I think it's Ophelia. Right. Okay, that sounds about right.
So maybe it could be a direct. I mean, maybe.
No, it definitely is. I'm just saying I don't remember who that character is or what the details are, so I don't know.
She's the one who loves. She's in love with Hamlet, and I think Hamlet does love her back.
Well, of course, but I'm saying, like, I guess I don't. Does Ophelia have magical powers? I guess is the real question I'm asking.
Oh, don't
or
recall.
visions. I should say.
Think so. I don't think so.
Well, in any case, Olga, as this character, you don't have to sell Anya Taylor-Joy on me like most, like you think most. You don't have to most people at this point. I mean, this is the most simpy comment I could ever make, but like I feel like I especially like her, like more than other people. Wow, like I have to make fun of myself for even daring or wanting to say that. But no, she and in my head, especially when the movie started, I was kind of like, yeah, I feel like she's just in this because it's she just wants to work with Eggers again, but it's not really going to be that interesting of a role. And it just got more and more interesting as it went. And I thought ultimately, even like the sort of believability, if you will, of her and Hamlin's relationship made sense to me. Like, because at first it felt very, and I think it's meant to some extent, because it's like, it is like,
well, she does ask him if he's going to come back for her, and like they pretty much just met. They just met, and he's like, "No, come back," and she's like, okay, will you look for me?
Well, hold on. So I didn't want to just say, because I get what,
but he had a vision of her.
I get he has had a vision of her, but I get what you mean. But like the way I interpreted the flow of time in this film is like, once he's in Iceland, once he's on Fjölnir's farm, like sometimes weeks or months are happening between the scenes.
I suppose I guess that could be the case.
I don't think it's like the next day. I think it's like weeks at least, if not months. So like by the time everything goes down, it's like he's been there for maybe a year, maybe more. You don't really see seasons change, to be fair, so maybe it's less time than that. But I have no doubt it's been a while, because the reason I'm quite sure is because by the time you get to the point where it's like narratively, where it's like he starts really striking back, it's like he's built up a certain degree of trust that you wouldn't have even if you did save the son in the game. That scene is also crazy. Even if you did save your half brother in the game, you know what I mean? Like you have to earn that. So he's been there a while, and then he gets the promotion. I think he's in the promotion for a while. So in other words, he's like seeing Olga every day. And it's like, it's like the two, it is like that, slave kind of love story. It's like the two is like walking by and like one's carrying the laundry and the other's like carrying the plow, and they're just like looking at each other. It's like that. But much more, and I think this is why the movie doesn't minces too much time on that, is because it is like very transactional at first. And that's what I mean. Like, it's like, hey, big, strong man, you kind of seem nice to me, so maybe you protect me. And he's like, well, you might have use. Like, so like, and then it becomes like, choose woman. He's like, well, I mean, she's definitely the best looking one there by a country mile. I mean, but like, so that's obvious too. But then it's like, she's like, I have a dream about you. And he's like, I have a dream about you. so it actually, that's what I'm saying. Like, you look at it, like it can feel awkward at times. But you actually look at the awkward beats together, they fit. And then it's like,
yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
By the time you get to the moment, which is like kind of the next moment, it actually felt very meaningful. He's like, but you come back for me, right? And he's like,
you come look for me.
Look for me. And then by the time he did, it's like, now we are united.
No, we never.
Then you get all the hot springs and all that shit. So, but then, anyway, that's actually builds full circle to the moment I talked about earlier. That fucking scene on the boat is so goddamn good. I felt it in the moment, because there's a point, like not even that long before that, like towards kind of the middle of the movie, where I was like, I really like this movie. It's visually incredible. It's already had so many great moments. It's blah, blah, blah. But in terms of the story, I wasn't sure I was getting much out of it. I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's just Hamlet, but like in Eggers, like ultra historical, like whatever, grim universe. And so I was just like, all right, cool. I guess I like it. But then it was very subtle the way it stuck up with me. By the time I got to the boat scene, well, before that, the other scene I'll get back to, it's kind of the important one, is the confrontation with Nicole Kidman. So we'll get to that in a moment. But that scene on the boat was just like, I felt it, man. It's been a while since I actually low-key felt that invested in a silly movie love story thing. I was just like, wow. I did not want him to go, but I knew he was going to. I was like, she's like, with her, I mean, it helps with it's Anya Taylor-Joy with the giant ass eyes. She's like, oh, you can't go back.
No, I think she knew what was coming. She knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, no. She did. That was what she's like saying. Like she knew. Like there was no. By the time he jumped off that boat, there's no doubt that was the last. She was like, I'm never seeing him again. Like that's it. And there's something like especially by modern standards, there is something kind of like, oh God, the classic thing of like, yes, but my son and daughter will live. Like it's like, but dude, like that's not gonna keep your your woman warm and safe at night, dude.
Darth Vader has one girl and one boy twin.
Yeah, that's true. That was one of the first things I thought when I saw the twin thing. I was like, that is very Luke and Leia. But I don't know. I don't know George Lucas's exact inspiration for that. If there was one, there might be some sort of common thread there that I'm not aware of. But I mean, there has always been stories about like the idea of royal twins. Like that's kind of a thing. But it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Did you notice that the twin that's holding the scepter is the woman? Is the girl?
I did notice that. Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. She's the queen of the bloodline.
Yeah, well, it was very interesting. It was very interesting to notice that. And again, like because the movie ends before you find out or anything else, unless maybe Eggers is prepping a secret sequel. It's just It was cool. I liked that visual. I liked the consistency. The way those more vision. I mean, that's the thing. We haven't even talked about cinematography or color palette, but one of the things I'll say about it, because there's honestly, the more we talk about this, the more I'm realizing there's so many things to talk about in this film. But I will just highlight the cinematography and color palette real briefly, which is to say, it can be striking how oppressively gray this movie is, but I love how it even takes the time to go stylistically extra gray, as like not even quite black and white. It's more like this very high contrast grayscale that they use for the visions or any scenes where he's talking to like the seer played by Björk, or in that catacomb. Where he's fighting the skeleton king or whatever, but specifically you also have it in those Anya Taylor-Joy visions, and
very
and like
desaturated look.
It kind of looks. It's hard. It kind of looks like this sort of just like inky kind of painting. It's very cool looking. And then I think more broadly, by contrast. Like we already kind of talked about the sort of what it was, the fountain tree of life type things, but it's those have these stark blues and light whites of like the stars and the molecules and the whatever. And so when you finally get all that colliding together in the Valkyrie's ride up to Valhalla, I mean, that's why you talk about the grills or the whatever shaved teeth. I think what's interesting is those blue eyes. I'm like, holy shit. That's like, it's like Norse steroids. It's like with blonde hair, blue eyed people, but the Valkyries.
Yeah, definitely.
They're on a different level. And then he's screeching, which is what they're supposed to do. And it's amazing. I knew we would end on that image. I knew this is definitely ending with him like ascending into Valhalla, but it did. It was great. Okay. We've talked about kind of now all the principal cast. I guess we didn't talk about Fjölnir, but I don't know. There's not much to say because I'm not familiar with that actor. And I'll be looking out for him more now. But I think
he did a very good job.
He's incredible. Like I said, dude's giant and ripped, and he plays this character like, I think this is maybe the best thing I can say. He's obviously meant to be the heel of the movie. He's meant to be very hateable. He's meant to be, all those things, and he is. But I actually thought a lot of humanity and genuine warmth was brought to him too. Like when he's mourning his sons, or when he's like in general, like fear and anger about.
I agree with you. They made him very well rounded. And then you realize that he's a murderer, but he's not a rapist. The chances
he's a rapist. He's absolutely a rapist.
Well, he let Anya Taylor-Joy go to the Northman because she fought too hard, and Nicole Kidman said
that'd be like saying love. Hold on, Data. I mean. That'd be like saying
they didn't show him. Okay.
If I try to kill you and then you like escape, that makes me not.
No. I'll rephrase. They didn't show his character being a rapist, but they told us that Ethan Hawke was. They showed him being merciful toward the women in the movie. It's assumed that he probably did, but they don't show it. Do you know what I mean? And then
I think it's made pretty explicit. I get what you're saying, but I have to disagree. It's made pretty explicit that he is and does all, and that's not like It's not like Anya Taylor-Joy is the first girl that he's bought.
No. But he said he didn't want her because she was too resisting. He didn't want her because
meaning like resisting. I'll just go to someone who's more docile,
or meaning I don't like to have women who resist me too much, right? I don't like when they resist because I don't like raping women. That's basically what he says. I want them to be easy, or I don't want to. I
gotta hard disagree on this. I think it's absolutely not the intention.
Based on what?
Based on the fact that of like who he is fundamentally.
But fundamentally, they show us that when he has an opportunity to rape a young woman, he doesn't.
No,
he says
okay.
she's resisting too much. And then when Nicole Kidman comes out and says he never had to.
Dana, okay, hold on, slow down.
Just because he's implied to be a Viking doesn't mean that I think they're trying to show us the humanity in his character by letting us know that he didn't force himself on any of the heroines of this film, but Ethan Hawke did.
Okay, no. I'm sorry, but no. Like, so he, first off, he by job, right? He runs this farm. Okay, the farm has slaves. Okay, now the whole purpose of the Anya Taylor-Joy thing is not to say, oh, for the first time ever, I am going to pick out this woman and consider like having her as my sex slave. And then because she fights me back, now I have rethought the entire concept of having sex slaves. So now I will not have one. And I have never had one before, and I never will. No, I don't.
I'm not saying
I don't.
that. I'm saying that he doesn't like to be violent and aggressive to get what he wants. He's saying that's not his style. Right?
Okay, no. I think I understand kind of what you're getting at, and I think there's something there, but I don't think this is the way it's expressed. And the reason I want to make sure that that's clear is because I don't want to. Though. I definitely do not want to let it be thought, at least from my point of view, at least from my assessment, that I think that this character is, quote, not a rapist, because he definitely is a rapist. Like
I'm saying that they're choosing to not emphasize that about his character. They're choosing to emphasize his mercy toward the female heroines of this film, toward both of them. Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicole Kidman both were shown mercy, relatively mercy.
That's what I'm saying. You're conflating the two characters and the relationships, and they're not at all the same. And this is why I want to get to now. Maybe there might be there could just be a genuine difference of interpretation here on part between you and I about this, and that's fine. But I just want to make it clear that, number one, owning female slaves and even considering to use them for sex, which I would say he did a lot more than consider, right? Even if he only did it the one time, let's say there's no reason to think
that this had happened, and he still gave Anya Taylor-Joy to the Northman. That's also slaves. He said, "You can have that one. I don't want her." You know, he treated her like property. And I'm not saying
wasn't
that's
him
not
that did
thing.
that. That would even then that was the younger that was the son.
The son
who did
said,
that.
"Dad said you could have anyone you want, even that one." He didn't want her because she was too resisting.
Yeah, no,
So,
I know. What I'm saying is, when he said that, I don't even think he was saying that because Fjölnir explicitly said all that to him. I think he was like, I know what goes on with my dad, so I know which of his slaves he feels which type of way about. And that was his way of saying, like, hey, like, I know that you, Hamlin, the Northman, are all over that Olga girl. I see you guys in the field all the time. Well, I happen to know that my dad wanted to make her hit his kind of like number one rape victim, but he kind of decided, she's not worth the trouble. So I know he won't even care if you have sex with her. That's what he's saying. I don't think look, here's the point, Dana. Even if I took all, in my opinion, obvious and clear inference to the way things tend to go down in these farms in Iceland in 900 AD, even if I took all that context away, right, and I just focus on what we literally see in the movie, right, in the one scene, to me, in the same way that attempted murder makes you a murderer, at least in the borderline essential way. I don't really buy into essentialism, but if we're going to label people at all, then let's just label them accordingly. Or it's more like if you said Fjölnir's a rapist and that's all he is, I would be more likely to reject that than I would be to want to reject the claim that he's, quote, not a rapist. Because to me,
I'm not saying that he's not.
Rapist,
I'm saying that they went out of their way to show us that he is merciful toward the two heroines in this film. He has chosen, I'm sure he's raped some other people because he is a plunderer, but not these two women. Not the two that we care about and not the two that we see. Specifically, these two, they're showing us that this is not just a bad guy. This is a guy that maybe does have a heart. And it's kind of reiterating what you had said earlier, like maybe there is something They're trying to show us the duality of this character. He's not just a heel. He has softness, and he says, you know what? This woman really is fighting me. I don't care that much.
Dana, I agree with all of that part. What I'm saying is that I just reject the idea that that's the way they want to show that, because I think the way they show it is much more to do with these other aspects of his life and himself. I don't think they just carry over. Like, I don't think because his relationship with Nicole Kidman's character is by all metrics legitimate, like they actually love each other, like they actually care about each other as much as people can in their sort of unequal power positions, right? Or at least compared to her, according to her. Again, like, you have to take everything Nicole Kidman says with a grain of salt too, mind you. But sure. I want to talk about that scene explicitly maybe next, because it'll be a better way to address maybe some of the other points you're making. I'm only saying that I do not consider what happens in that scene in any way an act of mercy towards Anya Taylor-Joy's character, Olga. I do not consider that to be, that's not my read on that scene. My read on that scene is literally like, fuck you, I hate you, but you're not worth the trouble right now to me. And like, he was fully prepared to slit her throat until Hamlin showed up and distracted her. So like, it's not a mercy on her. You could say it's a literal mercy in the sense that, oh, he doesn't literally rape her in that moment, doesn't literally kill her in that moment. But to me, that is to use that literal lack of action as equivalent or even implying towards actual mercy is just not fair, because to me, actual mercy requires the intent of mercy. Like, even the most minimal mercy still requires the intent of mercy. Otherwise, it's not mercy. It's merely what I said, getting distracted or having other priorities.
I think what I mean is that he doesn't come back again. You know what I mean? He doesn't wait a few days and try it again and say whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, most, if that's a sex slave, that's what you do. You don't just give up.
Okay, so actually that's a good point, but here's my read on that. And this is actually a good way to discuss Fjölnir's character more in depth, and even aside from the rest of it. Fjölnir is a coward. That's why he doesn't come back. It's not because, and he's insecure, which those are unrelated things. So the way I look at,
well,
okay,
he had his kingdom taken from him. He has kingdom taken from him immediately.
Hold on,
like a little bitch. So
okay, hold on. And I know we were talking about the Northman, so rape and slavery are topics in the movie, so of course we're going to talk about it. Not my favorite things to talk about for obvious reasons. But the thing I most thought of both in the movie, but also in the context of this conversation, and part of the reason why I want to stress some of the things I'm stressing, is, did you ever see 12 Years a Slave?
Yes.
Okay. So Michael Fassbender's character in 12 Years a Slave, we spent a lot of time with him, and the movie is definitely one of the sub ideas of the movie is discussing and analyzing the psychological sort of psychology of this Michael Fassbender master character and his obsession with Lupita Nyong'o's slave and his rape of her and all that stuff, right? So I would say in both cases, both Fjölnir and that character are deeply insecure. Yet they kind of respectively express each other in opposite ways. And I think there's reasons for that. I don't necessarily want to get into them all, but let's just take it at face value. So there's two, when you are, quote, rejected, because this is why it's important. There's a rejection in Fjölnir's mind. And you got to keep in mind that this would have been plausible. It's not what we see, but this would have been more than plausible from Fjölnir's perspective. You're my slave. You have to do what I say. Part of what I say and part of what I expect is that you at least pretend like you like it, or like at least indifferent to it. And it might seem weird, but I am just as interested in that part as I am the actual physical. So from Fjölnir's perspective, him ultimately accepting Olga's rejection, again, I'll give you this. It is merciful in the sense that it is certainly better than the alternative from Olga's perspective, but it's not
right. If
it's
he
not
was
morally,
this would
what
have
I'm
been a
saying is
different
it's
movie.
not morally admirable in any way, shape, or form. And the reason is what I'm getting at. So he accepts her rejection, not out of any sort of admission that he was wrong to try or that he would be wrong to try with a different person. You're right. He doesn't presumably try again, but I think it's only because of what I'm about to get to, which is that the rejection, it's like it ruined it for him. You know what I mean? It literally just ruined it for him because what he wants is someone who's submissive to the point of making him feel like they want it. And if you're not going to give me that, then I don't want you. Now, he could have just said, all right, well, then I will have you killed because you're of no use to me. But
right. That's exactly kind of what I think would have happened if she were any other slave or slightly.
I think
less
it's what could have happened. And I think it's obviously, given what happens later, it's what he probably wish he did. But I think the reason he didn't is, and you got to understand this is the other side of it. I know this sounds weird. Fjölnir is superstitious, right? Like even by the Viking standard, it's implied he's particularly superstitious. This is why this fear of the woman's blood thing is important. When she wipes her period blood on him, remember, Olga is considered to be a witch. He thinks it's cursed. He thinks it's cursed.
Yeah.
So he
I guess that was never clear to me, but that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. He thinks it's cursed. So it's not that he doesn't want to kill her. It's that he thinks that if he does, he's scared of what will happen if he does. So he has no choice but to basically allow her to live and just like kind of like take a step back. Now, again, like I said, later, I think he would have concluded, no, the curse was letting her live. But, hindsight. So anyway, that's the main point about Fjölnir. But since you bring up the difference between him and the Ethan Hawke's character, which again, I will want to highlight this because it's going to be very indicative of what we talk about. Everything said by Nicole Kidman's character should be taken as sus as hell, which isn't to say it isn't true. It's just to say that we have to understand we're hearing it from a character with motivated reasoning. Obviously, A, because she's trying to get out of the situation with her son, and B, because her perspective would be biased anyways, and C, because it's our only record, so we don't really know. Now, obviously, part of the reason you have a scene like that at all is because you're trying to deliberately call into question Hamlin's own bias, right? Which is important for his story, is him getting over this rose-tinted version of the past and this version of it in his mind of his father that is so noble and must be defended. So when he ultimately goes back to challenge Fjölnir,
this fantasy version of his childhood.
Right. So I'll just going back to the scene on the boat, right? Originally, the reason he's on that boat and is going to run away with Olga is because in his mind, what he realizes is that if I have to choose between revenge and love of my kin, I choose love of my kin because all my motivations for revenge, that I needed to save my mother, that my father deserves to have his vengeance, I actually disagree with now. He accepts the version of the story that he now knows. I'm not saying he accepts it all. I think he, like I'm implying I do, has some doubts about the sincerity of what Nicole Kidman's account is. But I think he knows in his heart of hearts, it's probably more true than his version of things. So it's not that either account is 100% fair and accurate, but he's probably like, shit, me little boy, of course I look up to daddy. Mom, maybe she's biased for bad other reasons, but she's probably has more truth than he sees the mark on his mom's collar. He knows that not everything's made up here, right? So and ultimately he's like, I love Olga. I learned a new way. I don't need to do this. But ironically, once he realizes that for sure Olga is actually pregnant, it all occurs to him that, again, you could argue whether he's right or wrong about this, but by basic medieval logic, this is true. My kids will never be safe in a world where Fjölnir lives, because they technically, if Fjölnir Now, because I was going to get back to this part, we didn't mention it. One of the interesting things about Fjölnir that I think makes him not outright sympathetic, at least interesting, and right out the gate, like this happens very early on in the movie. So you're almost like, huh, that's interesting. That's not what I would expect. It's certainly different than the Shakespeare version, right? Which is Fjölnir is not king anymore. He's been ousted. So he's not actively ruling the kingdom. Killing Fjölnir is not Hamlin taking back his kingdom. Like, he can take back his kingdom. That would involve fighting a whole different faction of people we never hear or see from, right?
Fighting that guy that killed or that ousted Fjölnir.
Right, but we know, as I'm saying, that they're not even characters.
They haven't even talked about who it is.
They haven't even talked about who it is.
Who took his kingdom.
I mean, presumably Anya Taylor-Joy now and her children are going to have to deal with this, but that's another movie if it ever happens. Northman 2, Viking princess. I don't know. Anyway, so when we meet Fjölnir, he's what they call there's a lot of medieval terms to this, like a petty, or I don't know, whatever it is. I forget. There's a specific term for it. That might be it. But it's like basically like he's the king in name only. He has some loyal followers on this farm that till the land for him and respect his authority and his lineage, but he's not in any actual power. And so that's the thing. For Hamlin's whole life, he's been building up this guy as this big threatening figure. And when we first see him, he's just a fucking sheep farmer. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, there's nothing special about him in that context. He's a sheep farmer, yes, who has, a couple dozen slaves. So he has people under them that he has total power to abuse and whatever, but he has no greater power in the land. And he can probably barely, like, it's almost implied, like, eventually probably someone's going to come and rape and kill him and his family anyway. And that'll be then. And part of Hamlin's motivation is, I better get in there first before someone else kills this guy, So there is that. I just think that sort of sympathetic positioning is interesting. It makes immediately you start to become conscious of the fact that Hamlin's sort of obsession is not necessarily congruent with the reality. Now, bringing that back full circle to this Nicole Kidman scene, which to me, other than the scene on the boat and the actual ending and the beginning part, is like the scene in this movie, because it's where Nicole Kidman gets to do all her acting. And it's where we get the full dun 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 Oedipus shit on lock, right? So
creepy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, as someone who is interested in stories from the psychological perspective, this is the scene that most sings to me. So she presents a very specific kind of image where it's like, no, your father was a terribly vicious slaver, and that's really all he was. Even this idea of him being some noble king is a complete fabrication. Yes, he had a crown and a kingdom, but it was like, he's basically a glorified pimp. Now, I want to keep this in mind. When I say that, what I'm getting at, and what I think the film is getting at, is it's getting at these sort of incongruities and these sort of like tensions that have always been there, that historically we know that if you think about things in a certain way, like sans the bullshit of mythology and nobility and all this stuff, what is the difference between a king and a slaver? I don't know. Like maybe a little less indirect brutality, but not necessarily. More pomp and circumstance. Taxes.
Collecting
there are some
taxes.
People would say taxes are a form of slavery. That's an absurd claim, but I'm just throwing it out there just to make that point. Either way, there's a sort of an unelective exchange of responsibility and ownership. Now, again, feudalism and slavery, certainly from an economic and cultural and sociological study, like anyone who studies these things, history, Marxism, whatever, would be able to explain this to you. It's not like they're the same thing at all. In fact, the differences between them and the development of capitalism and all these things is very important. But I'm just saying symbolically, in terms, which ironically is also part of the same thing, in terms of power and who the few holding power over the many, and that power being absolute or unquestionable, and there's just this totally outsized weight of the scale. That's what I'm getting at. And to bring it back to the psychological and to the personal and where this scene locates it is like a wife, a whore, a slave, a queen. These differences are a lot more just fluid and aesthetic as you might think, right? And if you look at medieval history, there is a lot of this. There is a lot of it. And it's very troubling. And I like that the movie takes its time to locate that because, again, I don't know much about the original myth that this comes from or the folklore that this comes from or whatever, the ancient Norse literature that this comes from. I'm not even sure the precise source, really. I'm pretty sure in the Shakespearean version, nor in, the Greek analog of Oedipus Rex, there's any implication that the queen was formerly lowborn or a slave. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering something. But as far as I remember, there's not. I don't know if you have something.
Well, in Hamlet, Ophelia comes from a noble family. She's wealthy.
No, not Ophelia, the mother.
Oh, you know what? I don't know. I can't recall. I thought she was also noble, but I don't know if they made a thing of it.
Well, what I'm saying is I think I'm not 100% sure on these things, but I would be more, not only just I don't remember it being any other way, but I would be more inclined to think she would have been because in the context of Shakespeare's time, the suggestion that someone who would have that title was not born into a station that was deserving of that title would have been scandalous. Whereas in the context of making a movie today,
kings had concubines and whatnot, but they wouldn't have been elevated to a queen status. So,
but even the concubine part would have been extremely painted over in a certain kind of way. At least that's what we see historically. Historians are good about kind of digging around those things to get to the truth, right? But that's my point, is that we now know, and we have enough understanding of material relationships and how those have evolved to understand and power imbalances and these different things, to understand that, like I said, whatever the reality was or is, and it's probably different from case to case, the distinctions can be rather in aesthetic or just in sort of rhetoric or just lies or just whatever, misunderstandings, and they're deliberate to paper over a relationship where there is ostensibly little difference. Your wife is your property. Your queen is your wife. That's it. It's like you are a pawn to be traded. We know that's true. No one questioned that.
100%.
So that's kind of the point, is that she's like, save me. Like, I'm just a pawn in other people's games. And you know what? I've preferred being Fjölnir's pawn. In fact, I long to be Fjölnir's pawn. And, the only way you're getting out of this with me is if I become your pawn. Would you like that?
That's exactly what she suggests. Yeah.
I know it's exactly what she suggests. That's why I was waiting in bated breath for this scene, because I was like, Hamlet, we got to go Oedipus. It's Nicole Kidman. Okay, here we go. And she outright says it. So I was like, okay, box checked. But my point is, it's more than a check box. It's actually something that I find to be very interesting. And I don't want to belabor the point, because I've already alluded to a lot of the complexity of the psychology there and whatnot. And I just think Nicole Kidman really shines in that scene. Alexander Skarsgård really shines in that scene. It's kind of like the turning point scene, obviously, because now when he goes on his quest, he knows, I'm going to have to kill mom too, ain't I? This is the cost.
And his half brother.
Half brother. Yep. I mean, he doesn't mean to in either case, but he kind of knew it was inevitable, which is, again, why I love the ending, bringing it full circle to the Mount Doom. It's like he has to mourn their loss. And I think from his point of view, it's like, it's a tragedy. I'm sorry it happened, but he doesn't regret it, because in his mind, it's like, this is all the fate. The fate is everything in my life has brought me to this moment of entering Mount Doom, and I will face Fjölnir, and I will die and go to Valhalla. And that's what's going to happen, period. That's what happens. But okay, I think that, look, I could go on a little bit more and talk about some of the means of the making of the film, the sort of interesting conversation about what it means for Eggers' career, its box office prospects, its marketing fails. There's so much there. We've already kind of gone on for a while. So I think I'm gonna leave that for other people to talk about. You know, it's being talked about. And I know I typically weigh in a lot on those different topics. So it's a thread we follow here, but I don't know. How are you feeling about that, Dana?
I mean, I think we hit what we needed to for this.
Yeah.
I think we've adequately explained what we could.
But yeah, I just want to say that, you know, earlier the year we talked about the Batman, and that was like, ooh, early front runner for me, best movie of the year. I mean, there hadn't been really many movies so far, but it was setting a high bar. I was like, that's a great one. I like the Northman, I think, even better, and I think I'm going to enjoy it even more when I see it again. I that's the thing. I'm considering going to the theater to see it again, help support it, but also just enjoy it again. I really loved it, and it it's even since seeing it like in my head and over the course of this entire conversation, I've just only grown to like it more. Honestly, it's a really interesting film with a lot to talk about.
Yeah, very well done. Big fan.
All right, Dana. We'll leave it there. And then I'll see you in Valhalla.
Talk to you later. See you in Valhalla. Bye.
Get some women, take them to the Peachtree Dams. I say get liquored up and take them to the Peachtree Dams.
Do you know what I mean? You know why? It's a scary thing to give to a guy like me. Do you know what I mean?
I say get liquored up and take them to the Peachtree Dams.
Do you know what I mean?
So get liquored up and take him to the Peachtree Dam. So get liquored up and take him to the Peachtree Dam.
Do you know what I mean? You know why? Final cut. It's a scary thing to give to a guy like me.